The blizzard hit Frostmoss Station exactly when our weather prediction systems said it wouldn't. Because apparently, even our most advanced meteorological technology enjoys making fools of us during the worst possible moments. Commander Thrax Stormclaw here, station chief of this icebound research facility on the edge of nowhere. 3 arms, natural armor plating, and 25 years of experience keeping scientists alive in places that actively try to kill them. Today was supposed to be routine equipment maintenance and data collection. Instead, I'm dealing with the kind of weather that makes survival experts weep and consider career changes. The emergency alert came through my communicator, just as I was settling down for my evening meal. Commander, we have a situation at Research Outpost 7. Dr. Willow Moonbeam is requesting immediate evacuation assistance. Dr. Moonbeam, the human xenobiologist who had insisted on conducting behavioral studies in the most remote, dangerous section of our facility. Because apparently, studying apex predators required getting as far away from civilization as possible. What's her status? I barked into the communicator while grabbing my emergency gear. Sir, she's reporting severe weather conditions and complications with her research subjects. Complications. In my experience, when humans use the word complications regarding apex predators, it usually means someone's about to become an unscheduled snack. The Frostmoss stalkers were the reason this planet had been classified as hostile to all known life forms by the Galactic Survey Corps. 12 feet of muscle, fang, and killing instinct wrapped in ice-white fur and equipped with claws that could punch through battle armor like it was tissue paper. They hunted in coordinated packs, communicated through subsonic frequencies, and had never, in recorded history, shown mercy to anything they considered prey. And Dr. Moonbeam had somehow convinced the research board to let her study them at close range. I activated my atmospheric transport and headed into the storm, the vehicle's heating systems working overtime against temperatures that could freeze exposed flesh in seconds. The landscape was a whiteout of swirling snow and ice, visibility reduced to maybe 10 meters in any direction. Research Outpost 7 appeared through the storm like a small beacon of civilization in a hostile wilderness. The facility's energy shields flickered against the driving snow, while emergency lights cast an eerie orange glow through the swirling white. Dr. Moonbeam, I called through my communicator as I approached the main building. What's your situation? Static crackled back at me for several long moments. Then, Commander, thank goodness you're here. I have it's a bit of an unusual situation. Unusual. Right. Because everything involving humans and apex predators was perfectly normal up until this point. I made my way through the storm to the facility's main entrance, my 3 arms working to keep the heavy door open against the wind. Inside, the temperature was barely above freezing despite the heating systems running at maximum capacity. Doctor? I called out, my voice echoing through the small research station. Where are you? In the main laboratory. But Commander, before you come in, I need to explain something important. I followed the sound of her voice through the facility's corridors, noting that several of the external monitoring systems had gone offline. The storm was playing havoc with our equipment, and I was starting to worry about our ability to maintain life support if this weather continued. The main laboratory door was sealed, which immediately set off every survival instinct evolution had given me. Sealed doors in remote research facilities usually meant something dangerous was on the other side. Dr. Moonbeam, why is this door locked? It's not locked, Commander. It's just, I didn't want to disturb anyone. Could you maybe knock first? Very gently? Knock? On a laboratory door? In the middle of an emergency evacuation? I activated the door's manual override and stepped into the lab, immediately scanning for threats. The room was dimly lit by emergency lighting, research equipment scattered across workbenches, and there, in the center of the room, was Dr. Moonbeam sitting cross-legged on the floor next to what appeared to be a small campfire. A campfire. Inside a research laboratory. During a blizzard. But that wasn't the strangest part. The strangest part was the tiny ball of white fur curled up against her leg, making soft whimpering sounds while she gently stroked its head. Doctor, I said carefully, please tell me that's not what I think it is. Well, she replied with that particular human expression that meant she was about to explain something that would give me indigestion. That depends on what you think it is. I looked more closely at the small creature. White fur with distinctive markings, oversized paws that suggested significant growth potential, and facial features that were unmistakably... That's a Frostmaw stalker cub. His name is Snowball, she announced cheerfully. Isn't he adorable? Adorable. She was calling the offspring of the galaxy's most efficient killing machine adorable. Dr. Moonbeam, I said slowly. Where did you acquire a Frostmaw cub? I didn't acquire him. I rescued him. The poor little thing was abandoned by his pack during the storm. Abandoned. Frostmaw stalkers didn't abandon their young. They were fiercely protective parents who would fight to the death defending their cubs. If this little one was alone, it meant... Doctor, if the pack abandoned this cub, there was probably a very good reason. Frostmaws don't make that decision lightly. Oh, I know exactly why they left him behind, she said, continuing to pet the small predator like it was a domesticated animal. He's sick. Look at his breathing pattern, the way he's favoring his left side. I think he has some kind of respiratory infection. Sick cubs got left behind because they slowed down the pack and attracted scavengers. It was harsh, but it was survival. And now this human had decided to intervene in that natural process. Doctor, even if the cub is sick, it's still a Frostmaw stalker. When it grows up, it's going to be 12 feet of apex predator with a natural instinct to hunt and kill. When he grows up, she corrected, he's going to remember who helped him when he needed it most. Besides, look at him. He's just a baby who needs medicine and someone to keep him warm. The cub chose that moment to demonstrate its harmless baby status by opening its mouth in a yawn, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth that were already impressively developed. Doctor, those teeth could take your finger off. Only if he wanted to. But he doesn't want to hurt me. Do you, Snowball? She scratched behind the cub's ears, and the little predator made a sound that was unmistakably a purr. A purr. A Frostmaw stalker was purring. This is impossible, I muttered, more to myself than to her. Frostmaw stalkers don't purr. They don't form bonds with other species. They certainly don't. I stopped talking because the cub had opened its eyes and was looking directly at me. Not with the predatory focus I'd expected, but with what could only be described as curiosity. Innocent, trusting curiosity. He likes you, Dr. Moonbeam said brightly. I think he knows you're here to help. Doctor, I'm here to evacuate you before this storm kills us all. We need to leave immediately. But we can't leave Snowball. The storm will freeze him to death. I looked at the small campfire she'd built in the middle of the laboratory. Doctor, did you start a fire inside a research facility? Just a small one. The heating systems couldn't keep up with the temperature drop, and Snowball was getting hypothermic. I had to do something. You built a fire. Inside a laboratory, full of sensitive equipment, to keep a predator cub warm. It seemed like the logical solution at the time. Logical. Only a human would consider starting a fire in a high-tech facility to be logical. Doctor, even if we could transport the cub safely, what exactly is your long-term plan here? You can't keep a Frostmaw stalker as a pet. Who said anything about keeping him as a pet? Once he's healthy and the storm passes, I'll reunite him with his pack, assuming they'll take him back. If not. She trailed off, looking down at the small creature with obvious affection. If not? What? If not, I suppose I'll figure something out. Maybe establish a rehabilitation program for abandoned predator cubs. It could be groundbreaking research. Groundbreaking research. She wanted to turn our remote research station into a sanctuary for baby apex predators. The storm outside intensified, rattling the facility's walls and reminding me that we had more immediate concerns than long-term xenobiology projects. Doctor, we need to discuss evacuation procedures. This storm is getting worse, and if we lose life support... I'm not leaving without Snowball. The tone of her voice carried that particular human stubbornness that had made their species both incredibly successful and incredibly difficult to work with. Doctor, transporting an apex predator cub during a severe weather emergency violates approximately 17 different safety protocols. Then we'll have to change the protocols. The cub made another soft sound and nuzzled closer to Dr. Moonbeam's leg, seeking warmth and comfort. The small creature's trust in this alien being was both touching and completely unprecedented in xenobiological literature. Doctor, I said carefully, what if the cub's pack comes looking for him? Then they'll find him safe, warm, and healthy, instead of frozen to death in a blizzard. I think most parents would appreciate that. Parents. She was talking about frostmaw stalkers as parents rather than apex predators. A new alarm started sounding through the facility, indicating that external sensors had detected movement in the storm. Something large, multiple large somethings, moving through the blizzard with purpose. Doctor, I said urgently, I think the pack just found us. Through the laboratory's reinforced windows, shapes moved through the swirling snow. Massive predatory shapes that could only be adult frostmaw stalkers, and they were heading directly toward our facility. Oh, good, Dr. Moonbeam said brightly. Family reunion. The first howl echoed through the storm, a bone-deep sound that triggered every prey instinct evolution had given me. It was answered by 5 others, each from a different direction. We were surrounded. Doctor, I said as calmly as possible, while my survival training screamed at me to run. I don't think this is going to be the kind of family reunion you're expecting. The facility's emergency lighting flickered as something massive impacted the outer wall. Through the reinforced windows, I could see the distinctive silhouette of an adult frostmaw stalker, easily 3 times the size of the cub currently purring in Dr. Moonbeam's lap. Oh my! She exclaimed, apparently delighted by the arrival of apex predators during a blizzard. They must have followed his scent. Snowball, your family came to find you. The cub lifted his head at the sound of approaching howls, his tiny ears perking up with obvious recognition. Instead of the fear response I'd expected from a sick, abandoned youngling, Snowball made a series of soft, chirping sounds that could only be described as welcoming. Dr. Moonbeam, I said urgently, reaching for my emergency communicator. We need immediate backup. Full security detail, emergency evacuation protocols, and possibly a medical team for whatever's left of us after. Commander, put that away, she interrupted, her voice carrying surprising authority for someone sitting next to a campfire with a baby predator. You'll frighten them. And frightened parents make very poor decisions about perceived threats to their children. Another impact shook the facility, this time accompanied by what sounded like deliberate scratching against the outer hull. The frostmaw pack was testing our defenses, looking for weak points in our protection. Doctor, those are not concerned parents. Those are apex predators, who could tear through our walls like paper if they decide we're a threat to their cub. Exactly. Which is why we need to show them that we're not a threat. That we're helpers. Friends, even. Friends. She wanted to be friends with a pack of 12-foot killing machines during a Category 5 blizzard. The scratching sounds intensified, accompanied by what my translation matrix identified as complex vocalizations. The pack was communicating, coordinating their approach. Classic hunting behavior that made my secondary heart rate spike into emergency levels. They're talking to him, Dr. Moonbeam whispered with obvious wonder, watching as Snowball responded to the adult calls with his own soft chirping sounds. Listen to the patterns. They're not aggressive vocalizations. They're asking if he's okay. I activated my portable translation matrix and listened carefully to the subsonic frequencies. The human was right. The adult frostmaws weren't making territorial claims or hunting calls. The vocal patterns suggested inquiry, concern, even relief. This is unprecedented, I muttered, watching through the windows as massive shapes moved through the storm with obvious purpose, but no apparent aggression. Frostmaw packs don't typically attempt communication with potential threats. They just eliminate them. Because they don't see us as threats, Dr. Moonbeam explained patiently, as if interspecies diplomatic theory was something she discussed over breakfast every morning. We have their baby. Their baby is warm, fed, and safe. We're clearly not predators. We're caregivers. Caregivers. She'd somehow convinced herself that a pack of legendary killers would view alien beings as caregivers rather than kidnappers. The main laboratory door's proximity alert activated, indicating that something large was directly outside our only exit. The facility's automatic defenses remained offline, standard protocol during scientific research to avoid accidentally targeting study subjects. "Doctor," I said carefully, "what exactly do you think is going to happen when they realize we've been keeping their cub inside our facility?" "I think they're going to be grateful that someone kept their sick baby from freezing to death during the worst storm this planet has seen in 50 years. Before I could explain all the ways that optimistic scenario could go horribly wrong, the laboratory's emergency communication system activated. But instead of the expected security alerts or evacuation orders, what came through the speakers was singing. Dr. Moonbeam had started singing, softly, gently, in that peculiar human way that somehow managed to sound both foreign and universally comforting. A lullaby, my translation matrix informed me. A song designed to soothe young mammals during periods of distress. Snowball's response was immediate and remarkable. The cub's breathing became deeper and more regular, his small body relaxing against the human's leg as the melody washed over him. Even more surprisingly, the scratching sounds from outside began to quiet, as if the adult frostmoths were listening to this strange new form of communication. "Doctor," I whispered, afraid to interrupt whatever was happening. "What are you doing?" "Something my grandmother used to do when I was scared during storms," she replied softly, never stopping her gentle song. "Music transcends species barriers, Commander. It speaks to something deeper than language or logic." The facility fell silent except for her voice and the distant howling of wind. Even the storm seemed to pause as the human lullaby drifted through the research station, carrying with it a message that needed no translation: safety, comfort, love. And then, impossibly, something began to sing back. Deep, rumbling harmonies from outside the facility. Adult frostmaw voices joining the human melody, creating a complex musical dialogue between species separated by millions of years of evolution. "Commander," Dr. Moonbeam said with quiet satisfaction, "I think we're about to make some new friends." The harmonizing continued for several minutes, creating the most surreal acoustic experience of my 25-year career. Ancient apex predators learning human melodies while a blizzard raged outside, and somehow it all made perfect sense in the moment. "Dr. Moonbeam," I whispered, "I think they want to come inside." The scratching at the main door had evolved into something more deliberate, rhythmic tapping that seemed to follow the musical patterns, as if the pack was requesting permission rather than demanding entry. "Of course they do. It's freezing out there, and they want to check on their baby." She continued her gentle song while reaching over to activate the door's manual controls. "Would you mind getting that? My hands are a bit occupied. Would I mind? Would I mind opening our facility's protective barriers to let in a pack of 12-foot predators during a storm that could kill us all?" "Doctor, are you absolutely certain this is a good idea?" "Commander, look at Snowball. Does he seem worried about his family coming to visit?" The cub had indeed perked up considerably, his small tail wagging with obvious excitement as the adult voices grew closer. Whatever fear I'd expected from a sick, abandoned youngling was nowhere to be found. Against every survival instinct evolution had given me, I activated the door controls. The first adult frostmaw that entered the laboratory was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. 12 feet of perfectly evolved killing machine, ice-white fur still sparkling with snow, golden eyes that could track a moving target at impossible distances. Everything about this creature screamed apex predator, except for one crucial detail. It was moving with the careful, deliberate caution of a worried parent. The massive being approached Dr. Moonbeam slowly, its enormous head lowered in what could only be described as a respectful posture. When it was close enough to touch, it gently sniffed the air around Snowball, confirming the cub's health and well-being. "Hello there, beautiful," Dr. Moonbeam said softly, never stopping her lullaby. "You must be Mama or Papa. Your little one has been such a good patient." The adult frostmaw made a low, rumbling sound, then did something unprecedented. It settled down next to the human, positioning itself so that Snowball was surrounded by both protective presences. "Remarkable," I breathed, watching as 4 more adults filed into the laboratory with the same careful respect. "They're treating you as a pack member." "Not a pack member," Dr. Moonbeam corrected gently. "A babysitter. Someone they trust with their most precious possession." The largest adult, presumably the pack leader, approached my position near the door. I found myself face to face with enough concentrated lethality to level a small building. Instead of the predatory evaluation I'd expected, the creature studied me with obvious intelligence before making a series of soft vocalizations. "I think he's thanking you," Dr. Moonbeam translated, "for bringing help when their baby needed it." "How could you possibly know what he's saying?" "Because that's what any parent would say to someone who helped save their child." The pack leader extended one massive paw toward me, claws retracted, in what appeared to be an offer of contact. Every military protocol I'd ever learned screamed at me to maintain defensive distance from apex predators. But the gesture was so clearly peaceful, so obviously an attempt at communication. I reached out with one of my 3 hands and gently touched the offered paw. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The entire pack began purring, a deep harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate through the facility's walls. It was a sound of contentment, of acceptance, of gratitude. "Doctor," I said quietly, "I think we just became honorary members of a Frostmaw pack." "Isn't that wonderful? Think of the research opportunities, the behavioral data we could gather, the insights into interspecies communication protocols. Research opportunities. Only a human would experience first contact with legendary predators and immediately start planning scientific papers." The storm outside began to intensify again, rattling the facility's walls and reminding us that our current situation, while miraculous, was still potentially deadly. The laboratory's heating systems were struggling against the combined demands of the weather and our unexpected guests. "Commander," Dr. Moonbeam said thoughtfully, "do you think the pack would be interested in staying until the storm passes? The little one really shouldn't be traveling in this weather." Before I could explain the logistical nightmares involved in housing a pack of apex predators in a research facility, the pack leader made the decision for us. The massive creature moved to the laboratory's main window, gazed out at the swirling chaos, then returned to settle permanently beside Dr. Moonbeam and Snowball. The message was clear. They weren't going anywhere. "Wonderful," Dr. Moonbeam exclaimed. "It'll be like a sleepover." "Commander, do we have enough food for everyone?" "Food. For a pack of 12-foot carnivores during a 3-day blizzard." "Doctor, our standard rations weren't designed for apex predators." "Oh, they'll hunt for themselves once the storm clears. For now, I think they just want to make sure their baby stays warm and safe." As if to confirm her assessment, the adult frostmaws arranged themselves in a protective circle around the small campfire, their combined body heat raising the laboratory's temperature to almost comfortable levels. Snowball dozed contentedly in the center of this living fortress, occasionally making soft sounds of contentment. "Doctor, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you know this would work? How did you know they wouldn't see us as threats?" She considered the question while gently stroking Snowball's fur. "Because I've spent my entire career studying predator behavior, and one thing remains constant across every species. Parents will do anything to protect their children, but they'll also recognize and appreciate genuine help when it's offered." "And the singing?" "Music is universal, Commander. It's mathematics made audible, emotion given voice. Every species that has developed complex communication has some form of music. It transcends language barriers because it speaks directly to the emotional centers of the brain." The pack leader made a soft sound and moved closer to Dr. Moonbeam, extending its massive head toward her free hand. She began scratching behind its ears with the same gentle care she'd shown Snowball. "Besides," she continued with a smile, "my grandmother always said that a good lullaby could soothe any crying baby, no matter what species." Your grandmother gave you advice about interspecies childcare? My grandmother was a very wise woman. She understood that love and kindness work the same way everywhere in the universe. 3 days later, when the storm finally cleared, I filed what was probably the most unusual incident report in Galactic Research Corps history. The Frostmaw pack had remained with us throughout the weather emergency, turning our remote facility into the galaxy's first impromptu interspecies daycare center. Dr. Moonbeam had used the time to conduct the most comprehensive behavioral study of apex predators ever attempted, documenting everything from their social hierarchies to their surprisingly sophisticated child-rearing practices. Snowball made a complete recovery under her care, though he seemed reluctant to leave his new human friend. The pack leader had apparently decided that Dr. Moonbeam was now permanently part of their extended family. Before departing, the massive creature had marked our facility with scent markers that would identify it as protected territory to any other predators in the region. "So," I said to Dr. Moonbeam as we watched the pack disappear into the ice fields with their healthy cub, "what's your next research project?" "Well," she replied with that dangerous human enthusiasm, "I've been thinking about studying the social dynamics of void serpents. They're supposedly completely antisocial, but I suspect that's just because no one has ever tried approaching them properly. Void serpents. Creatures that could survive in the vacuum of space and considered black holes to be acceptable nesting sites." "Dr. Moonbeam," I said wearily, "please tell me you're not planning to adopt any baby void serpents." "Oh no. I'm planning to start with the adults. Much more interesting behavioral patterns." I stared at her retreating form as she headed back to the facility, humming one of her grandmother's lullabies. 6 months later, I received a priority message from the Galactic Research Corps headquarters. Dr. Moonbeam had successfully established communication protocols with a void serpent colony and was requesting permission to expand her Universal Child Care and Interspecies Harmony project to include 15 more apex predator species. The attached video showed her bottle feeding what appeared to be a baby void serpent, while adult members of the colony provided protective escort through a nebula. "Sometimes," I muttered to myself while approving her resource requests, "I wonder if humans realize that the rest of the galaxy considers them the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. Not because they were apex predators themselves, but because they had this terrifying ability to convince actual apex predators to become their willing allies." And it all started with a sick cub, a campfire, and a lullaby that taught the universe that sometimes the most powerful force in existence is someone who knows how to care for a crying baby. Even when that baby happens to have fangs, claws, and the genetic potential to level entire cities. The galaxy would never be quite the same. And somehow, that seemed like exactly what it needed. But the real changes began 2 weeks after the Frostmaw incident, when my communication array started receiving priority signals from research stations across 3 sectors. "Commander Stormclaw, this is Research Station Alpha 9 requesting immediate consultation," came the urgent voice of Director Ironshell, a Thexian administrator whose species was known for their calm, methodical approach to crisis management. "We have a situation involving our human xenobiologist and what appears to be an entire colony of venom spiders." Venom spiders. 8-legged nightmares the size of hover cars, with neurotoxic bites that could paralyze a full-grown Garathak warrior in seconds. They were considered so dangerous that most species simply evacuated entire planets when colonies were discovered. "Director, please tell me Dr. Starbright hasn't been conducting unauthorized research with apex arachnids." "Worse, Commander. She's built them a nursery." A nursery. For creatures whose natural instinct was to inject venom into anything that moved. "I'll transmit our Frostmaw protocols immediately," I said, mentally updating my emergency response procedures to include interspecies childcare scenarios. The next call came from Station Gamma 12. "Commander, we need guidance on housing logistics for Dr. Rainfall and her adopted family of crystal wolves." Crystal wolves. Predators who hunted through solid rock and could generate electromagnetic pulses powerful enough to disable starships. They'd never been successfully studied because they vaporized anything that got within scanning range. "How many wolves?" I asked, though I suspected I didn't want to know the answer. 17 adults and 23 cubs. Dr. Rainfall says they're excellent research partners and wants to expand the pack integration program. The calls continued throughout the day. Dr. Moonbeam's methods were spreading across the galaxy faster than a hyperspace communication network. Human researchers everywhere were apparently discovering that their unique approach to childcare worked with species that had been considered impossible to study. "Commander," my communications officer announced, "we're receiving an urgent transmission from Galactic Research Corps headquarters. Priority Alpha classification." The main screen activated to show Director General Vex Titanfist, a battle-scarred veteran whose expression suggested he was dealing with the kind of crisis that kept military commanders awake for weeks. "Commander Stormclaw, I need a full briefing on your facility's recent developments. Specifically, I need to understand how one human female managed to establish diplomatic relations with a species that has been classified as impossible to approach for the past 3 centuries. Sir, Dr. Moonbeam's methods are unconventional, but remarkably effective. She approaches apex predators as potential family members rather than research subjects." Family members. The Director General repeated the phrase like he was tasting something foreign. "Commander, are you telling me that human childcare techniques work on apex predators?" "Sir, that appears to be an accurate assessment of the situation." "And these techniques can be taught to other species?" I thought about the growing number of reports crossing my desk research stations, where formerly hostile creatures were now serving as voluntary research partners. Facilities where the most dangerous predators in the galaxy were learning to communicate with alien scientists through music, play, and shared caretaking responsibilities. "Sir, I believe we're witnessing the emergence of a new approach to interspecies relations. One that treats aggressive behavior as a symptom of unmet needs, rather than an immutable characteristic." Unmet needs? The Director General's expression shifted from confusion to something that might have been hope. "You're suggesting that apex predators attack because they're lonely?" "Not lonely, sir. Misunderstood. Dr. Moonbeam's research indicates that most aggressive behaviors are defensive responses to perceived threats. When you approach these creatures as potential allies rather than enemies, they respond accordingly." The Director General was quiet for several long moments, processing the implications of what I'd just told him. "Commander, I'm authorizing the establishment of the Interspecies Harmony Research Initiative. Dr. Moonbeam will serve as Director of Xenobiological Integration, with unlimited resources and a mandate to expand her methods across all known apex predator species." "Sir, that's a significant expansion of our research parameters." "Commander, 3 sectors have reported a 70% reduction in predator-related incidents since human researchers started implementing these childcare protocols. Colony worlds that have been under constant siege for decades are suddenly reporting peaceful coexistence with creatures that were previously trying to eat their inhabitants. The implications are staggering, sir. The implications, Commander, are that we may have just discovered the key to galactic peace. If humans can convince apex predators to become allies instead of enemies, imagine what they could do with species conflicts that don't involve actual predation." The communication ended, leaving me staring at a priority message from Dr. Moonbeam herself. She was requesting permission to establish the galaxy's first Apex Predator Rehabilitation and Family Integration Center at our facility. The attached proposal included detailed plans for nurseries, play areas, and what she called interspecies bonding workshops, where young predators could learn cooperative behaviors alongside alien caregivers. "Commander," my communications officer announced, "we're receiving applications from 47 research facilities requesting to participate in the pilot program. Also, the Diplomatic Corps wants to discuss adapting these methods for territorial dispute resolution." I approved Dr. Moonbeam's proposal and began preparing for what would undoubtedly be the most unusual expansion project in galactic research history. 6 months later, Frostmaw Station had been transformed into a sprawling complex that housed the most dangerous creatures in the Yao galaxy alongside the scientists who studied them. The facility's daily routine included feeding schedules for 17 different apex predator species. educational programs where young predators learned problem-solving techniques from human researchers, and what Dr. Moonbeam called community sing-alongs, where creatures from across the galaxy harmonized in languages that had never existed before. The success rate was unprecedented. Not a single incident of predator aggression had been recorded since the program's implementation. Instead, the facility had become a model for cooperative interspecies development that was being studied and replicated throughout the galaxy. Dr. Moonbeam, I said during one of our weekly progress meetings, do you realize that you've accidentally revolutionized galactic civilization? Oh, I don't think it was accidental, she replied, watching a group of crystal wolf cubs playing with void serpent juveniles under the careful supervision of their respective parents. I think the universe was just waiting for someone to remember that every monster is somebody's baby, and watching former apex predators teaching their young to share toys and solve problems through cooperation rather than competition. I realized that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest acts of kindness. Even when those acts involve building campfires for baby predators and singing lullabies during blizzards.